Creating panoramas can be an effective way to present designs to clients, and it takes far less time than an animation. Open the House 4 sample file. This file contains a camera in the center of the breezeway space. Press C to look through that camera. It's necessary to create a camera and place it in the middle of a space prior to rendering a panorama. Go to the Utilities tab and use the Panorama Exporter utility. Click the More button if you don't see this button here, and then click Render. This dialog box has many of the same options that you see in the Render Scene dialog box. However, it's customized for panoramas, so the presets are suitable for panoramas. You'll have to use more pixels than you're accustomed to get a decent looking panorama, because the number of pixels here represents the total width of the panorama, and it has to account for the 360 wraparound effect. I'll use Mitchell-Netravali anti-aliasing, and I'll leave everything else with the default settings. I'll click Render, and you'll see that the rendered frame window is actually square. What this is doing is rendering 6 separate views of the scene from the position of the camera. So this exporter is automatically rotating the camera, and it's also adjusted the field of view so that these 6 views can be tiled together into a seamless panorama. When it's done rendering all 6 views, it will stitch it together automatically and present it to you in a viewer. Unfortunately, this viewer is only visible in Max or Viz. Here's the viewer, and I can drag in that viewer to rotate my point of view so that I can appreciate the panorama. Go up to the File menu, and you can see that there are 3 options available for export. I'll start with a QuickTime VR panorama, and I'll just give it a name, panorama.mov, and I'll save it. In order to view a QuickTime VR panorama, you need to have QuickTime installed, and not everyone does. It might be difficult to convince a client or the general public to install QuickTime because it is a big download, and it's not installed by default on a PC. I'll open that QuickTime movie to show you what this gives you. It appears in the QuickTime interface here, and you can zoom in and zoom out, and you can drag to pan around. It's a little bit jerky, however, compared to the internal viewer. And I don't really like this approach. I favor using another approach which uses a Java applet to display the panorama in a browser. And I'll show you that in the next video. But first, we need to export from the internal viewer into another format. I'll export a sphere image of this panorama, and I'll just call it Panorama JPEG, and I'll set the quality at about 76. Then I can close the viewer and the render setup dialog, and I'd like to show you what we just saved. Go to the File menu and select View Image File, and then open up the Panorama JPEG. So this is a spherically distorted image that is suitable for use in third-party panorama solutions.